In the last video, we made sure that we had the appropriate image for this project and we had set up the initial Illustrator document. Now we're going to go ahead and place our image in Illustrator, but before we do that, there's a couple things that we want to do. So let's go to our image, let's open it up in Photoshop first. And what we want to do is, first of all, let's just double check one more time that we have enough pixel dimension. So we'll go to image, image size, and we're looking for at least 1500 width. This is twice that, the height is 1800. Yeah, so we're good. Okay, if you need any adjustments made to the image, let's say it's a little too dark or whatever, make layer adjustments. So click this icon right here. Usually levels is a good place to start, and if we need to adjust the levels on this, we'll do so, and you can always go to the extreme to see what these do. And I think just bringing that in a little bit, maybe this, and the thing is, it really doesn't matter, you can always change it later. That's the beauty of a layer adjustment, is you can turn them on and off, right? Watch what happens when I toggle the eyeball. It went back a little bit darker the way it was before, but I like that. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to be working from a Photoshop document, not a JPEG as this image is right now for me. The reason is that a Photoshop document will support your layers. So first thing we're going to do is File, Save As, and a very smart thing to do is save this and the Illustrator document inside of the same folder. So I'm going to click New Folder here, and I'll just call this Mag Demo, call it whatever you like. Click Create, Save. Now we should be good to go into Illustrator. So I have my Illustrator document set up per the last video, where it's 8 7/8 of an inch wide by 11 1/4 inches tall, and I'm now going to put the image in here. But the proper way to do that is you go up to File and you go Place. Don't just drag and drop it in or some sloppy method like that. Navigate to your folder and click on the Photoshop document, click Place, and then just click anywhere to place the image. And as you can see, with that image being quite large, high in quality, that's perfect. And we're going to move that around. We're going to hold down the Shift key when we resize the image. And let me just emphasize what happens if you don't hold down the Shift key. You can stretch the image. You do not want to do that and spend hours and hours on setting up the document and have it wrong. So hold down the Shift key, make it smaller, release the mouse first, then the Shift key second, and keep repositioning the image. Keep holding down the Shift key, releasing the mouse first and the Shift key second until you have an image that is not squished or stretched in exactly the place that you want it. Now the image that you're working with won't be pre-cropped like this, so you would be able to put the top of the head, maybe without such a crop. But I'm just going to go ahead with this for demo purposes. You may want to also look at the past student work for inspiration on how you want to put your face in. And you just have to remember that you're making room for the masthead and the teaser titles and all the required text that has to go in. There's something very important to understand right now, and that is that this image placed inside of this Illustrator document is not actually part of the Illustrator document. It's more like the Illustrator document points to that image. So I'll try to give you an example of that and what can go wrong if you don't understand that. For now, let's go ahead. We'll do a File, Save As. So this is the right way. This is what you should be doing. You should save this. You should navigate to the magazine. Well, not the magazine, but the folder, and save this inside of the folder. Right now all that's in there is the Photoshop document. You click Save, click OK. Now the important lesson here is that if you were going to move to another computer, you want to take not just this file with you, you want to take this folder with you that contains both items. You could go ahead and get rid of the extra copy of your Illustrator document. You could even at this point, if you wanted to, get rid of the JPEG that you had. Never hurts to save that stuff if you have the room though. I want to show you what happens if you go to the library or just some other place or hand this file off to someone, what can happen. And to mimic that, I'll just take and remove the Photoshop document from inside of this folder. You know, pretend like we're opening this up in a brand new workstation. So we're opening up this Illustrator document, and that's typically what happens right there, is it tells you that it cannot find that image. And that is, again, because that image is not part of the Illustrator document. It just pointed to it. Now it can't find it. So if this ever happens to you and you do not have the image with you, you're out of luck. If you do have the image with you, or it was an image that you can find like on your cloud or on the internet or something like that, then you might be okay. And what you would do is you would click replace and you would navigate to where the image is, or even better yet, you would repair the folder. You would put the image inside of the folder, then click replace because it'll be where it's supposed to be. In my case, I would just cancel out and say, okay, I need to rebuild the folder, and then it will be able to find it. So I'll put this image back inside the folder. Now when I open up the document, it will be able to find it. Now there is a way to embed an image into Illustrator, and then it makes the Illustrator document larger by the size of the image. And you might be thinking, well, why don't we just do that? Wouldn't that be easier, more foolproof? But here's the reason why most professionals don't do that, is because a lot of times they're working on different versions of Illustrator documents with the same image. And then if they did that, every Illustrator document would be that much bigger. Also, and here's the huge benefit, is when you make your changes in Photoshop, which will be plenty for this project, the Illustrator document will recognize that you made changes and adjust for you. So let me give you a demo of that. Let's go into Photoshop. This is our same image opened up. Let's make a change. In this case, I'll just throw a layer on top so I can delete this. I'll just do something kind of drastic here just so you can see it. We'll just put a circle around her face. We'll save it. We'll go back to the Illustrator document. And you see that it says some files are missing or modified. And would you like to update them now? Click yes, and the change you made is there. We're ready to continue on the project, and the smart thing to do would be to line up all the required text. So the only typefaces that are allowed for this project are the ones from Typographic Specimen, the Great Typefaces. So in order to see that list of fonts, you just go to Amazon, go to Books, and start to type in Typographic Specimens. And usually you get about that far and it comes up. And then you want to click on this little icon. Well, look for one of them here. If it's not the first one, the second one will get you there. And what I'm referring to is you want to see this right here, this look inside. Click on that. Go to the table of contents, which is just a couple of pages in. And the names of the chapters in the book also happen to be the names of 28 fonts. So look down this list, look at what's available on your computer, and those are your choices. And you never, at the maximum, need more than 3 fonts. Usually 2 is plenty. Usually you want to go with a serif font and a sans serif font. But since you have a masthead in a magazine, sometimes the masthead is in its own unique font, and then the other 2 fonts would be, you know, mix and match. But you certainly, and I would actually recommend it, that you just pick one font and you go with, say, a serif or a sans serif for the masthead, and then you go with another font, the opposite. So if you picked a serif font for the masthead, then pick a sans serif for the rest of it. If you're at all unfamiliar with what that means, I have a couple videos that I'm recommending that you watch that'll be right next to this project, probably embedded in it. In fact, they will now be right here with your project. The first one is on typography, and then the second one is layout and composition. They're only about 6 to 7 minutes long. Great little videos. It probably makes sense to start with the masthead. Notice how many different ways these students have successfully and differently done the masthead. The thing that should stick out the most between science and quarterly would be the word science, and you can see a lot of them have gotten that great sense of something being really big, the number one hierarchical thing, by making the word science really big and quarterly a little bit smaller. So with all that information in front of you, just go ahead and copy and paste into Illustrator. Should be able to go into the project in Canvas and just swipe across. Command C to copy, go to Illustrator, get out the text tool. Probably you're going to want to use what's called point text, which means you just click on the text tool, click once with it, Command V to paste. And again, if you're using dragging to make the text bigger, make sure that you release the mouse first and then the Shift key second. So click, drag, Shift key, mouse, mouse then Shift key, and we'll start moving things around. And layers are your friends, so go ahead, find out what layer this is on. I'll just create another layer. You guys are probably experts on layers by now, but we'll click this, we'll move it to a different layer. That way we can lock the image layer and we can start messing around. I think the only way I'm going to get this big enough is if I just concentrate on the word science first, and then I can just treat quarterly as totally independent. Got to keep an eye on colors here so that they make sense. Be careful that you don't create tangents around the edges, so it's always good to make sure that things are a good distance from the edge. And remember, the edge is not this red line, the edge is this black line in here. And a lot of times it makes sense to be about an inch from those lines, but when it's something important like the masthead, often they do get real close to the edges like that, just so they can really get that pop. When you have text that wraps around, you don't want to set these all independently as point text. But you probably don't need to actually bring out a type area either. So what you can do is, for example, just do point text again, which is just a click, and then Command V to paste your information in there. And then when you get it up to size, being very careful that you're not stretching anything. And sometimes it helps to just put a crazy color in here at first till you figure out what the right color is going to be for you. Sometimes that reminds you to change the colors because you definitely want them to harmonize. Since I went with the sans serif here, I want to go with the serif font here to make it a little bit different. Now generally, if you're in really close, you can go across someone's forehead. But look at some examples from past student work. You almost never want to go over the eyes. You generally in the past never wanted to cover up the masthead, but even as you'll see from some of the examples, that's broken a lot now. And then what I would suggest you do here is just put the cursor in there, delete, and then hit the return key. And then what's nice about this is even if it goes on to 3 lines, then when you want to change the distance in between these lines, you just simply rely on the text features. So right here I can go over to text, and you can see that I have this, this is the font size, and then this is the leading. So if I double click to where my cursor is in there, if I start making that leading number bigger, that changes the amount of space between those. So I'd get those so that they look just right with the other things. And then again, what I'm trying to do is get this to be like number 1 for text, and then this to be number 2, and then the other things should be smaller. And if this doesn't feel big enough, then I'm going to have to, or important enough, I'm going to have to make it bigger. And maybe it becomes, are they already here among us, on 3 different lines. Check your text often to make sure that you did not stretch or squish it. Like if you accidentally squished it like this, here is how you can figure out for sure that you did it and how to fix it. Select all of the text, go over here to the character panel, hit these 3 dots, and you'll see a horizontal and a vertical scale here, make sure that those are always both at 100% and you know your font has not been compromised. Go until you add all the text and make sure you get a beautiful sense of hierarchy where you have like a number 1 for text, number 2, and then things off in the distance.